The door is open. Anyway, so Bez Hashem, let's start, people. You know, it says every person is the entire world. And the proof is that God created Adam alone. The whole world came from one person. So if one person comes and studies, that's great. At any rate, you know, we're going to do something in Parshat Misphatim. Actually, I think it's going to be something which is very relevant. If you look at, on chapter 23, Pasuk Aleph, the first Pasuk, the Torah starts, says, Lo tisa shema shav, which means don't accept false report. Now the question is, what does the Torah mean, do not accept false report? So it's in the Gemara. Rashi brings both opinions. One opinion is that he's talking about a judge. That if one of the litigants comes in front of you, you can't listen to him if the other litigant is not there. In other words, if two people have a fight with each other, right? So one of them comes early and he says, Judge, come listen to me. He tells the Beis Din, listen to me. He's not allowed to do that. Because, first of all, it could be that there's nobody else to contradict what he says. So if the judge is going to hear only one side of the story, he's going to believe him. And then when the other guy comes late, it's very hard to make him change his mind. Besides that, when one person is, many times they spice up what they say, they add lies to make it seem more truthful. But if the other guy is there, it's going to stop him right away. So according to one opinion, this is talking about a judge not listening to one litigant before the other person is available. But then Rashi brings another explanation, Davar Acher, another explanation that what the Torah means, do not accept false report, it means do not accept Lashon Hara. So this is actually a commandment that we are not allowed to even listen to Lashon Hara. It says do not accept it. Okay? Actually the Gemara says, since there is no dot in the Torah, instead of reading Lo tisa, don't accept, you could say Lo tasi, do not give Lashon Hara. So it's a transgression for the speaker too. So basically, we're going to talk about this. The concept of gossiping, Lashon Hara. It's something that, unfortunately, in this town, everywhere, in the news, everything is Lashon Hara. But let's see, first of all, where is the Torah commanded, and how severe is it really? I just said something bad. I didn't do anything bad to him. So the original place for not speaking Lashon Hara, it's in Parshat Kedoshim, where the Torah says, it says, Lo telech rachil ba'amecha. You can't go tale-bearing amongst your nation. And I was saying a story from one guy to the next. So that's the original place. But over there is only talking about the speaker. I cannot speak Lashon Hara. Where does it talk about that I can't even listen? That's our Parsha when it says Lo tisa, don't accept it. Now Lashon Hara has 4 levels. They're all included in the tale-bearing. But the Rambam says there's 4 levels in Lashon Hara. One is worse than the other. Now, what are the 4 levels? The first level is called rechilut, which means tale-bearing. Basically, let's say, what's your first name? Sorry, Alex? Alexander, right? So imagine I tell you, Reuven, you know what Alex, do you know what Reuven said about you? Or do you know what Reuven did behind your back? So this is a Lashon Hara that pertains to you. It's not that I'm just randomly talking about somebody else that has no connection to you, right? I'm just talking what this guy did about you. So this is called rechilut. That's called tale-bearing. I take this guy's story or something that he did about you, and I'm going to let you know about it. So first of all, if it's something bad, that's definitely Lashon Hara. The Rambam brings on a story that it could even be that it's something that Reuven is not going to deny, and actually could be that he's proud of it that is being done. The door is locked.
This is a very relevant topic to my life. I actually was this weekend I had something very similar happen.
Well, let me finish it, then I'm going to try to answer questions. No problem. If you want to put something behind the door so it stays open.
You might forget. You don't want to leave it open. It's not safe.
But nobody's coming in. Anyways, guys, please walk in. Don't worry about it.
Come in.
Because we are not praying, you don't have to be in ladies section. Anyway, so please guys come over here and don't worry about it. So we're talking about, levels of Lashon Hara, gossiping. So it says that the Rambam brings a story that it could even be that, let's say, Reuven doesn't feel bad and he's not going to deny, he's going to actually accept it that he said it, but it could cause a big harm. Let's go through the story, what the story was. The story was that David HaMelech, he married his first wife, was the daughter of Shaul. Saul was our first king. So obviously King David gets married into the family. And then later on, Shaul started, actually hating his own son-in-law David. Because he was told by the prophet that the kingdom is not going to continue going to his son, Yehonatan. Somebody better than him is going to become a king for one of the sins that he did. And he started doubting that maybe King David, David HaMelech is going to become the next king. So he tried to kill him. Now King David sees, he's not a king yet, by the way, he's only a son-in-law of the king. He sees, that really it's very, very dangerous. And his father-in-law actually sent, soldiers to the house to grab him and kill him. So his own wife saves him by throwing him down from the window. The soldier was standing by the door, that he was going to get out of the house, they're going to capture him. So he decides to run away. He runs away without anything. No weapon, no food. And he comes to a certain city, I think the name of the city, Nov. Comes to the city of Nov. That's where the temple was at that time. So he gets the dead hungry, and he tells the high priest, and he doesn't say the truth because he wanted to save his life. He says, I'm on a very secret mission for Shaul. I didn't bring any food, I'm about to die. Can you give me something to eat? So that to give him the bread of the temple that only Kohanim eat. And then David says another story. I have to go on a secret mission for Shaul, my father-in-law. The problem is I was in such a rush I forgot to take ammunition with me, a sword. Do you have a sword to give me? Now obviously in the temple you don't make swords. But they had one sword there. When King David killed Goliath, Goliath. So then they put that big sword in the temple as a sign of thanks to God. So they give him the sword. At that time there was a man with the name of Doeg, that he was no friend of David HaMelech. So he goes and tells Shaul, you know what happened? You know what Doeg did against you? I'm not Doeg. You know what? It was Achimelech, the high priest. You know what he did against you? Isn't King David your enemy? He gave him food and he gave him a sword. So Shaul calls him right away, Achimelech. And he says, did you help my enemy David? So he says, I did, and it was an honor for me. I didn't know he's your enemy. He's your son-in-law. I didn't know he's your enemy at all. Anyways, the end was that Shaul tells Doeg, make an army and destroy the whole city of Nov. There were 85 priests that got killed. All 85. Achimelech gets killed too, but his son manages to run away, and he runs away to King David. Now this was a story here that we see, it's called Rechilut. It's called tale-bearing. He went and told Shaul, you see what Achimelech the high priest did to you? He helped your enemy. Now even though he was proud of doing it, he didn't deny it. He thought he's doing something good. But this caused bloodshed. So that's the lowest level, the least bad. Everything is bad in Lashon Hara. But this is the least bad, called Rechilut, because what you're saying what this guy did to you. Now there is a worse level, one level worse, which is called Lashon Hara. Right? Lashon Hara means, what do you call it? Gossiping, whatever it is. Yeah, evil language or whatever it is. And that is, let's say, this guy is not doing anything to you. He just did something. I want to make him look bad, so I'm going to give you bad news about him. Imagine I see a guy going into a non-kosher restaurant. Just an example. So I'm going to come, Mr. Alex, you saw what Levi did? I saw Levi eating non-kosher food in that restaurant. Not only that he ate the non-kosher meat, but he actually put cheese on top of it too. So he made it milk and meat mixed up. Right? Now, it could be true, I'm not saying no, but it has nothing to do with you. I'm not even telling you to go fix him up, because you have nothing to do with that guy. My only intention is to make you look bad. Now, because this has nothing to do with you, doesn't pertain anything to you, I'm just bad-mouthing him, that's a second level which is worse, it's called Lashon Hara. By the way, it could even be true. But my intention is not to save you, it's to bad-mouth him. That is Lashon Hara. Okay? So this is one of the, it's a mistake that a lot of us make. When you talk to the older generation, what are you saying bad about this guy? But Rabbi, it's true. They think if they're saying the truth, it's not Lashon Hara. Even if it's true, it is Lashon Hara. There's a level which is worse, and that is if you make up a story, a lie about that person. But in other words, you're saying something that he never did. So that's not called Lashon Hara anymore. That's called Motzi Shemra. You slander. Motzi Shemra means you made his name bad. Now, how bad is that really? If I make a lie about somebody. So this is something that maybe most of us are not familiar with. Imagine I'm picking on Alex today, but please come back next week too. I think the week after I'm going to pick on you if you come. Are you okay? Don't be scared. I don't pick bad stuff, I only say good things. So anyways, imagine I said something bad about you, Alex, right? God forbid. But what I said about you was 100% true. So I come to you on Yom Kippur or a day before Yom Kippur and say, Alex, I said something bad about you. I'm really sorry. I'm begging you, forgive me. I promise I'm not going to repeat it again. So you have an obligation to forgive me. Because the bad thing that I said about you was true. It's a great sin. But I didn't lie, so you have an obligation to forgive me. What if what I said about you was a lie? Now the Chafetz Chaim adds, even if it was 80% true, I just put 20% lies. Now let's make it even better. 98% was true. I just put 2% lie. It's not Lashon Hara anymore. It's called Motzi Shemra. Slandering, saying lies. So whether if I come to you Erev Yom Kippur, according to the law, you don't have to forgive me. Could you believe that we say Yom Kippur, forgive? But if I say a lie about you, again, if you want to be a pious person, be a chassid, you should forgive me. But according to halacha, you have no obligation to forgive me. What's the logic behind that? Because when I said the lie about you, 10 people, maybe they heard it, and possibly they're going to spread it another place. But when I came and I asked you for forgiveness, those guys don't know that I'm sorry. So the lie still continues. So that's a third level of Lashon Hara, which is called Motzi Shemra. Now the worst level is, unfortunately sometimes by uneducated people, when people have nothing to do, right? They're not really scholars, they can't study Torah, they never went to school. So, and they're old, they're not working, and even if they work an hour a day. So they decide to go in the park and play backgammon, right? So far, nothing wrong. Not majorly wrong. So then while they're playing backgammon, what happened? What did your neighbor do? So they go play backgammon every day, but they make it their business that every day they talk about other people. No matter what level it is, the truth, lie, it could be anything, any level of Lashon Hara. Usually Lashon Hara is, I don't go around bad-mouthing. You say somebody's name to me, I don't like him, so I say, don't talk about this guy. So many bad things he did. But it's not my business to speak Lashon Hara. Over here, they actually make it their habit. Every day, they play backgammon, and they say, let's talk about everybody else. So that is called Mesapre Lashon Hara, or it's called Ba'ale Lashon Hara, which means masters of Lashon Hara. Such a person, if he doesn't repent before he dies, he does not have a share in the world to come. The other Lashon Haras, they do. They get severely punished, but they have a share in the world to come. But if it's a daily routine for me to talk about everybody else, unless I repent before I pass away, I'm going to lose my share in the world to come. So these are the 4 levels. I'm just going to go over it one more time. Again, if I say what someone said about you, or he was about to do something against you, that's tail-bearing. That's the lowest, least bad. If I just badmouth somebody, nothing to do with you, even if it's the truth, that's Lashon Hara. If I make up a lie, that's called Motzi Shemra. You don't even have to forgive me on Yom Kippur for that. But if it's a daily routine to just talk about everybody else, so then if I don't repent, I'll lose my share in the world to come. Now, how bad is Lashon Hara? Actually, somebody asked me, let's go through this, and then I hope that tonight we can finish at least this subject. How bad is Lashon Hara? So if you want to really, the best book to study is the book of the Chafetz Chaim, Shmirat HaLashon. He really toiled all his life to write this book. He goes through like so many details. He proves from a couple places that the main reason why the Jewish people suffer in exile, and actually we are in exile, is only because of the sin of Lashon Hara. Now obviously every sin is very severe, don't get me wrong. We always think, because people don't keep Shabbat, because maybe people intermarry, maybe that's what causes, for Mashiach not to come. Well, they have a lot of, very negative effects. But the Chafetz Chaim proves, we're going to go through 2 places, that the main reason why we are suffering in exile is only because of the sin of Lashon Hara. The first proof is from a Gemara. The Gemara Masechta Yuma says, our temple got destroyed twice. So the first temple got destroyed. The Gemara says, why? What sins did they do? I mean, it wasn't just destruction of the temple. Millions of Jews got killed. When the enemy attacks and destroys the temple, of course, you're going to try to defend your, country. Anybody defends their country. You also see from Ukraine what's happening. And then when you talk about a holy land, of course, people are going to defend it. So during that whole time of destruction of the temple, we lost millions of lives. So what sin did they do that God, whatever thought, or he decided they deserved this whole great punishment? So the Gemara says they did 3 cardinal sins: adultery, idolatry, and bloodshed. These are the only 3 sins that you're supposed to allow yourself to get killed and not do it. If somebody comes to you, let's say, what's your name, sorry? David was my name. All right. You named after King David?
Yeah.
Well, my mother went and prayed by King David's grave. And I said, if I have a son, I'm going to name him David. Really, that's what happened. Yeah, I was a baby after five years of not having children. My mother went especially to Israel then to pray to have another boy. I guess God listened.
I was just at his grave.
At the grave of David. I'm sure he's very proud of you. He says, wow, look at this David standing next to me. That's it. When you get married, he's going to become more proud of you. To a good Jewish girl. Okay. Anyways, so I just say this, I hope you don't mind my sense of humor. So anyways, going back, so the Gemara says, let's say somebody comes over to you and he says, you know what? What?
You had a question.
Yeah, at the end, when I finish. I'm going to leave place for questions, no problem. So what happens is that someone comes to you and he says, you know what, today is Shabbat. Either cook for me food or I'm going to shoot you in the head. God forbid. You're allowed to cook the food. Because your life is more important than the commandments. Actually, the Torah says, keep the commandments so you shall live. It doesn't say anywhere, keep the commandments even if you're going to die. No, it says, v'chai b'hem. There are 3 exceptions. If somebody tells you, commit adultery, otherwise I'm going to kill you, or worship idols or I'm going to kill you, or you got to murder somebody else, otherwise I'm going to kill you. So in those 3 cases, a person is supposed to allow himself to get killed. They learn it from verses, different psukim. Regarding killing another person, Rashi gives a very logical reason. Why does the Torah say sin and don't let yourself to get killed? Because a life is more important. But if you're going to kill the other person, you destroy a life and you do the sin anyways. So you didn't gain anything. But if a person allows himself to get killed, at least no sin is done. That's the logic that Rashi brings, even though they learn it from different verses. But at any rate, these were the 3 sins. They were supposed to get killed and not do it, but they did it anyways. But then the Gemara has a problem. That's in terms of the first temple. In the second Beit HaMikdash, almost all Jews were religious. The Gemara says an amazing thing. They studied Torah, they kept the mitzvot, they even did, kind deeds. So if they were so religious, how could God allow the Beit HaMikdash to get destroyed? It doesn't make sense. The Gemara says because they had sinat chinam, they had hatred for no reason. Baseless hatred. And Chafetz Chaim proves from a couple of places that it doesn't only mean that they hated in the heart, but actually verbalized it. They spoke Lashon Hara. So even though they were religious, but we see that Lashon Hara is so bad, no matter how religious they are, it doesn't have enough merit to keep the Jews safe. Because of only sin of Lashon Hara, they were exiled. He brings another story to prove it. You see, what happens is we could live in exile, God forbid, but at least everybody's healthy, everybody makes tons of money, no diseases, no problems. But why are we suffering in exile? I'm telling you, there is no family that doesn't have some suffering. Whether it's financial, whether it's mental, emotional, I don't know, whatever, different illnesses, it's really terrible. So the Chafetz Chaim wants to say that's also because of the sin of Lashon Hara. Why is that? He brings a story. Moses one day kills the Egyptian, right? Because he was beating up one of his brothers, another Jew. So he was killing that Egyptian. Once he kills that Egyptian, so he goes. Once he kills that Egyptian, so he goes to the Jewish community again, where the Jews were working. He sees one Jew is about to hit another Jew. So Moshe says, "You wicked one, why do you want to hit your friend?" And he says, "Well, who made you my boss? Do you want to kill me like you killed the Egyptian?" And then according to the Medrash, he threatened, they're going to tell, Paro. So Moshe gets scared. The Torah says Moshe was afraid. That's the language of the Pasuk. Vayira Moshe, Moshe was afraid. Vayomar, and he said, Achen noda adavar, the thing is known. What was he talking about? So Rashi brings two explanations. He was afraid for his life. His life is in danger. Now the story is known. Especially if you say they threatened, they're going to tell Pharaoh. And then number two, when he says the thing is known, means the fact that I killed the Egyptian. But Rashi is not happy with that. Because Moses didn't run away. He stayed in Egypt until Pharaoh caught him. And Pharaoh gave him to the executioner. When they put, the sword on his neck. So the Torah says, it's not clear, but, the rabbis through the Medrash, they prove it. What? The commentaries, yeah. They say what happened was, his neck turned into a marble. So the knife went back, the sword went back, and he killed the executioner. And then Moses ran away. So the rabbis have a problem. If he was afraid for his life, why didn't he run away? So you must say that he wasn't afraid for his life. He was afraid of somebody else, something else. What was he afraid of? So it says he was afraid. He said, I'm worried that the Jews don't deserve to get saved from slavery. So if that's what his fear was, what is he saying? The thing is known to me. What thing is known to me? If you say he was afraid for his life, so it says it's known that I killed the Egyptian. But he was afraid that the Jews are not going to get saved. What's known to him? So Rashi says, Moshe was a very, very smart man. He had access to the entire library of Pharaoh. He wasn't just a prophet. He was a very, very smart man. He had he had an education just like any other children of Pharaoh. The best education. So it says, I studied the history. And I was always wondering, what did the Jews do bad that they deserve so much punishment? Adultery, other nations do worse. Stealing, other nations do worse. What are the Jews doing so bad that they deserve to have such great punishment? So Moshe says, now I found out. They speak Lashon Hara one against the other. Obviously the question is, what, other nations don't speak Lashon Hara? What is Moses saying? So there's an answer to that. We put it for a different time. Lashon Hara hurts the Jews a lot more than other nations talking bad about each other. That's a different subject. But at any rate, he says, now I know why they deserve to be slaves. What do we learn from this? That if there is gossiping amongst the Jewish people, even if they're in exile because of that, they deserve hardship. That's what it warrants, unfortunately. So the question is, I was one time teaching this in Santa Monica College many years ago. So one of the kids asked me, Rabbi, I don't get it. In the 10 Commandments, it says don't kill, don't commit adultery. You know what I'm saying? But it doesn't say don't speak Lashon Hara. Why is Lashon Hara so bad, even worse than adultery, worse than not keeping Shabbat? Shabbat is in the 10 Commandments. Lashon Hara is not part of the 10 Commandments. So why is it so bad? So the Chafetz Chaim brings 3 explanations. Explanation number 1 that he brings, he says that, God judges the people in a very democratic way. Why is there democracy on earth? Because there's democracy in heaven. That's what the idea is on earth. You always think the opposite. On the earth there is democracy, so God does democracy too. No. In certain level there is democracy by God. That's what there's democracy on earth. So when I do something wrong, just like in this world, right? Obviously before the government was weaponized, if you follow the news, when there was a rule that you're innocent until proven guilty. So when I do something wrong, I don't get punished. They take me to court. They bring people that defend me, they bring the prosecutors, and then the jury sits down and they decide who's saying the truth, right? But again, I'm innocent until proven guilty. Same thing when a Jew does something wrong, he usually, there's no punishments until the Satan, the Satan, which is the prosecutor, comes and he brings all his sins. Until the Satan doesn't come, there's no punishment. That's the way normally it works. So if the Jews don't speak Lashon Hara, that means I don't accuse you verbally, or I don't want to hear any accusations about anyone. So then when the Satan comes on Rosh Hashanah to say bad, God says, well, listen, my children, Jews are not speaking bad. They don't accuse each other. You have no permission to accuse them. So according to the Chafetz Chaim, basically, as long as our sins are between us and God, not one human hurting another human, if we really get along, you get punished for nothing almost. Because God doesn't let the Satan speak. But the moment that I accuse somebody or we listen to Lashon Hara, once I say something bad about somebody else, so that opens up the mouth of the Satan to accuse the Jewish people too. There was a story actually, when I was in rabbinical college. So there was a 16-and-a-half-year-old kid that was in high school, very, very good kid. His name was Shmuel Chitwig. I was very close with him, good friend of mine. I used to learn with him once in a while. So one time what happened, he went to a summer camp during the 3 weeks. He was in a 15-passenger van. It was very, very tragic. And then they got into an accident. The van turned over. Everybody was alive except this kid. He passed away at the age of 17. So then that Shabbat, the Lubavitch Rebbe was speaking. This was in the late 80s. So the Rebbe was speaking, and he cried on Shabbat. He said he did not deserve to die. The reason why he died is because there is Lashon Hara, Sinat Chinam, hatred for no reason, amongst the people. So because of that, the Satan first takes the most innocent person away. So I was always wondering, why is the Rebbe saying that? Because I speak Lashon Hara, the most innocent person goes away. So the truth is, Chafetz Chaim brings from the Zohar. That's what happens. When I speak Lashon Hara here, tragedy happens on the other side of the world. I don't know what the reason is, but that's what Chafetz Chaim says. That's reason number one why Lashon Hara is so bad. Because it weaponizes the Satan. He gets the permission to say bad about, all our sins. Reason number two, these are all very logical reasons. The second reason that he brings down, he says when, God forbid, tragedies are supposed to happen, prayer is supposed to avoid tragedies. We believe in prayers. When you pray really hard, God answers. But the only time God answers is only if our power of speech is not contaminated with bad. When somebody says bad words, or when he speaks Lashon Hara, so his power of speech is contaminated. Because it's contaminated, the words of prayer that come out, they don't make their way to heaven. These evil forces that are created from our Lashon Hara or bad words, they grab the words, they don't let it go to heaven. So when you do any other sin, that doesn't contaminate our power of speech. The speech is pure, the prayers go to God. That's one of the questions that I always have. When somebody becomes a chazan, right? They always ask him, is he Shomer Shabbat? Is he Shomer Shabbat? If he's not Shomer Shabbat, he can't be a chazan. I never heard asking, does he speak Lashon Hara? If he speaks Lashon Hara, he shouldn't be a chazan. Seemingly from this Chafetz Chaim, someone that gossips, his prayers are more blocked than somebody that doesn't keep kosher and somebody that doesn't keep Shabbat. I guess we assume if he keeps Shabbat, so he's going to control his mouth too. Maybe. But I don't know. I have no idea. So this is the second reason why Lashon Hara is the worst. And then he brings a third reason. When somebody does sin, if it happens once, okay, it's not so bad. If the sin happens 10, 15 times, so one time a sin is like a little thread, easy to rip it up. If you repeat the same thing 10 times, then it becomes like a rope that is very hard to rip. If the sin is very big and it happens multiple times, then it's like, as we say in Yiddish, oivei. Like, it's really terrible. So let's say if a guy doesn't keep kosher, honestly, how many times a day does he eat non-kosher food? Half of the food in the States are kosher anyways. You buy any tuna, is almost kosher. Any dairy stuff is almost kosher. Any bread you go buy in Ralph's is almost kosher. The only non-kosher stuff that somebody might eat is if he actually goes buys meat or seafood, I'm saying, that you have all those garbage there. But any normal food, tuna, dairy, it's all kosher. Besides that, even if it's completely non-kosher, you don't eat more than 3 times a day. How much can you eat? Can't eat much. If somebody doesn't keep Shabbat, God forbid, Shabbat comes once a week. If somebody doesn't fast on Yom Kippur, comes once a year. But gossiping, it happens 10, 15 times a day. it's a big sin by itself, and when it happens 15 times a day, 10 times a day, so obviously it makes a very big impact. So I mean, one of the things that we learn here actually is that we have to actually encourage ourselves, try not to speak Lashon Hara at all. And you know, the only way that we could convince ourselves, if I don't love someone, I'm just scared of the punishment, that oh, Lashon Hara is so bad. But if really I don't love the other person, it's very hard to control myself because I hate it, God forbid, and I want to say something bad. So the urge is there, but I'm controlling myself. You could do it, but it's very hard. We have to somehow get rid of that hatred, that I don't want to talk Lashon Hara about somebody. So here comes, the concept of Kabbalah very beautifully. I'm going to go through it very, very short, quickly. What? No, I know, don't worry about it. So we're going to go through it quickly, and that is, when you study Kabbalah, we learn actually the unity of the Jewish people much different than simply learning. So the Arizal comes and says, the Jewish souls together, they make one gigantic spiritual body. That gigantic spiritual body is the soul of Adam, the first man. How do we know his soul included everybody? Because when he sinned, he brought death to the whole world. Right? I didn't sin, he sinned. So let him die. Let Chava die. They both ate from the fruits of the tree. We were not there. Why did God bring death to the whole world? So the Arizal comes with a novelty, with a chidush. The Arizal says because his soul was actually all-inclusive, included everyone within him. So even though my physical body wasn't there, when he ate from the fruit of the tree, he contaminated his entire soul. So we are also contaminated. Each one of us, now that you have 15 million Jews, Ken Yirbu, each one of us is like a small limb of this big gigantic body. It's actually a Gemara. The Talmud in Yerushalmi says, the Torah says don't take revenge. How do I convince myself not to take revenge? You hurt me. I want to take revenge. They say revenge is sweeter than honey. Right? Don't think. The Torah says it. Even other nations say they learned it. Revenge is sweeter than honey. Oh, I got even with him. So the Talmud says, imagine you're working and with your right hand, you have a hammer in your hands and you strike your left hand. The left hand is not going to strike the right hand because you're both hands of the same body. If the right hand gets hurt or left hand gets hurt, you're not going to take revenge by hurting yourself. So what do we see from this Gemara? Two Jews are like two hands of the same body. If I really convince myself that we're all connected, so then automatically it's difficult for me to hear something bad about somebody else. It's as if I'm saying something bad about myself, or at least part of myself. With this idea, Arizal explains many things in the Gemara. Jews are responsible one for the other. If you do a mitzvah, it affects me in the positive. If I do a sin, it affects you. Why? He says because we are all limbs of a big body. When one limb gets diseased, it actually affects the entire body. Even if someone has an ingrown toenail, we can't concentrate. That's the way it is. Even if it's the furthest part of the body, nail, not even your hand nails, your toenails, all the way the lowest part of your body. But it's so painful that the person cannot concentrate. The Ramak, who was the teacher of the Arizal, goes even deeper. It says not only that each one of us is a small limb of a big body, but the truth is that in your soul there is a part of every other Jewish soul too. Within you there is everybody else, at least part of them. And the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Lubavitch Rebbe, proves that. He brings like an example from a human body. He says, you know what, the same blood goes through the whole body. The same blood which is in your hand is in your feet, correct? So then your life force is in the blood. So it's a correct statement to say that in your hand you have the life force of your feet. Because the same life which is in your hand is in your feet. So in the hand you have the same life force of the feet. So in every Jew has part of every other Jew. So when I do a mitzvah, I'm sanctifying everybody else, at least their part, which is part of me. And when I do a sin, I'm affecting somebody else. So if we convince ourselves that, I don't mean convince like fool ourselves, this is the truth. If we allow the truth, penetrate through us, that we are all parts of one big body, small limbs of a big body, or within each one of us there's a part of another Jew, then I wouldn't want to speak Lashon Hara. The problem is I look at another Jew as a separate person because I'm limited to my body. I don't look at the soul. So you're a separate person, I don't like you, I like myself more, and you hurt me, so I have the urge to speak bad, then it's very difficult to control myself. But if I look at you as part of myself, naturally, you don't want to speak Lashon Hara at all. To make it very simple, would you like it if somebody comes and says something bad about your brother? Even if it's true. Do you like to hear something bad about your parents? Even if it's true. I don't want to hear it. It's part of my family. I don't want to hear it. Don't talk to me about it. So actually all Jews are family. That's one of the things. If you have any questions, please go ahead. There's just one small thing that I wanted to discuss. We do it later on. When we eat the pizza, we're going to do it. Any questions?
Kind of be Lashon Hara to ask the question about.
But if you don't say somebody's name, then it's not Lashon Hara.
Okay, then.
If I can't guess who it is, if I could guess who it is.
But
Okay.
It's none of you know the person. But basically, I was put in a situation recently where I was between two friends, and one of these people is Jewish, and the other person is not. So I kind of I don't know. This person claims to be so moral and righteous, but I'm sitting there and I'm listening to her talk, and she's just speaking pure Lashon Hara. I asked because it affected me. I asked my friend about it similarly because I couldn't believe that he had, this isn't something he would typically say. Like he has the foresight not to speak this falsehood or this thing that I told him in confidence about myself. So I told him this, and then he obviously I felt bad for putting him on the spot, explaining himself. So Lashon Hara it's a big sin. I didn't think it would be, and now this is spiraled completely out of control. It's completely crazy.
The best thing is, anybody starts to speak Lashon Hara, change the subject. Or say, sorry, I have to go to the bathroom,
Yeah.
So make up something, seriously. Better not to be there at all. Anyways, I'm going to get, God willing, I'm going to get the pizzas across the street. And while we're holding the pizza, I just want to go over one small point. Actually, we don't need faith for that. We have seen it in history, very important thing. And then, whatever you enjoy, please guys encourage others to come. Most of the kids that used to come to the valley came from LA. So we moved the class to LA, so let's make it happen. Bezrat Hashem.